So how do we know how well we're doing if we're not tracking what we're doing? Well, in this episode, I talked to Dr Tom Worthington from the University of Cambridge, and he's developing a restoration tracking tool that will help us collect more data and track the success of coastal restoration actions across the globe.
Well, we're in a period where restoration is really at the forefront of kind of lots of efforts around conservation, biodiversity, human health, and ecosystem services. And we're investing huge amounts of money in this restoration to try and improve the quality and quantity of the Earth's ecosystems. But I think in a large part, we in some ways don't really know how far we're going towards meeting our targets on restoration. So we wanted to develop a tool that allowed us to track mangrove restoration across its global extent. So what we've done is brought together scientists, NGO scientists, and people implementing mangrove restoration in the field to try and develop a framework with which we can record mangrove restoration projects. This has led us, by collaborating with 60 to 100 different scientists and practitioners from around the world, to this tool that allows us to say, this is how a restoration project can be put together and how we can best record it and monitor it through time.
What outcomes do you see from using the tool? Is it for scientists, or is it for NGOs who are implementing the conservation, and governments, or is it for policymakers who are trying to find ways to fund the conservation?
It reaches across a number of those different categories. So we've worked very closely with a number of the large NGOs to try and track their restoration projects across a wide variety of countries. But it also provides a really useful database for scientists to be able to look at what's the most effective approaches when we're thinking about restoration, both in terms of the returns you get in terms of ecology, biodiversity, and socioeconomics, but what's the most cost effective.
So you may wonder why we're doing this interview in wetsuits. It's because we're just about to head out on a vessel and check out some field sites. And so Tom, you've been testing this tool with some restoration field sites in different locations globally. So why is it so important that once you've developed this very general framework to get the locals to test it out at their own restoration sites?
We want to be geographically comprehensive, so we've tried to reach out to people from across the world. We've done 3 workshops, one in Fiji, one in coastal East Africa, one in Mexico, and we've had kind of participation for about 26, 27 different countries. It's being applicable at different scales, so we want it applicable to a global science audience, but we want it to be really applicable particularly for people actually doing the projects. So if we've not designed a framework that can be useful to them, then it's of limited use. So what we had was people going out in the field in Mexico to try and capture whether the tool worked for them and start to highlight where bits could be improved.
And through that you learnt like where the gaps were and what you needed to improve, right? There was, I think, some social data missing or something.
And one of the key things that we kind of some of our workshop participants pointed out was that, you know, for different stakeholders, why they do restoration varies hugely. So you've got some large NGOs that may have one really important reason why they want to restore an area of mangrove, but for the local community it might be something completely different. And I think having that information from practitioners really helped to make it, you know, locally relevant in terms of the tool. And we hope to be able to capture restoration projects that are aiming to do different things in different locations.
So it sounds like it's going to be a really amazing database that you pulled together, and we look forward to seeing some of the results you're going to produce and seeing that help improve restoration in mangroves across the globe, which, you know, is sorely needed. So last question, I was just wondering if you have any advice for early career researchers who might be thinking about how can I make my science have more impact, and they want to develop ways to help, say, improve restoration like you have.
I think one of the underlying positives of the tool is the collaboration that we had across different countries, different expertise. So really I think the key thing is collaborate, particularly with people who are doing implementation, you know. So we've partnered with the NGOs of the Global Mangrove Alliance, particularly WWF, in terms of trying to work out what's useful for their field sites.
So I'll just catch you there. So it seems like it's key there that you're part of this Global Mangrove Alliance partnership, because that lets you make those connections to the NGOs and on-ground users, because that's a gap that people often find hard to make. It's like, how do I meet these people?
Yeah, and I think, everyone has different roles within conservation. I think I see myself really as providing some of the science that can be applied, but we can only apply it really if we have those connections with the NGOs and the people doing implementation. So, they're the people who are working on the ground, and if we can make sure the tools and data sets and analysis that we do are useful for them, then I think they have much more utility than just being purely a scientific product.
Well, thanks for listening today. That was Dr Tom Worthington from the University of Cambridge talking about the Mangrove Restoration Tracking Tool. So I'll share the link to that in the show notes. If you like this episode, please share us with friends and family. It's the number one way you can spread the word. And don't forget to subscribe on YouTube if you'd like to hear more. Now we've got to get off to the boat because it's about to leave and enjoy our snorkeling. Thanks for listening.